Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. So I gotta say, or who knows, I don't know how many times I have to say this, right? But yes, I drove a Chevy Bolt EV 1,100 miles in a day. Technically, I think it was about 22 hours. And you know, this was a while ago. I'm kind of foggy on the details. But the good thing is, I actually tracked this trip. So, you know, as they say, I have time slips. And so the thing is, this is coming up again because unfortunately, and for whatever reason, Tesla folk feel like they're qualified in some way or another to speak on behalf of the public charging infrastructure. And most of the people who do seem to either be missing some key details or they just don't really know what they're talking about. So the data is either omitting information or the way they're comparing chargers, but none of it really actually is based in any sort of real world experience except what they know about the Tesla network and maybe once or twice having a chance to use the public charging infrastructure. And you know, I got into a discussion and it makes me wonder sometimes because it was me and it was Steve from Plug and Play EV, and between the two of us we probably know more about the public charging infrastructure in the United States than almost anyone else. Steve very particularly on the eastern United States, and you know me, I think I know a thing or two about the public charging infrastructure in western United States. So for people who rarely if ever use it to push back on us like we don't know what we're talking about, it kind of makes me question what their motives are when, you know, putting down the public charging infrastructure. And what came out of this is, you know, I mentioned in passing that I drove the 2020 Chevrolet Bolt EV that I reviewed 1,100 miles in a day. And this one guy didn't believe it, right? He's running through the numbers. He's saying, you know, in theory, you might be able to do exactly 1,000 miles or whatever in 24 hours, but it takes 70 minutes to charge to 80%. Well, no duh, but that's why I tell Bolt EV owners not to charge to 80% if they want to make their best trip times, right? So, you know, there's a decent amount of ignorance, and then of course the other comment based on the public charging infrastructure is there just aren't enough chargers that are faster than 50 kilowatts. And so what he was saying was actually true, that I wouldn't be able to drive 1,100 miles in a day if all I had access to were 50 kilowatt chargers. But luckily, that is no longer the case. And for a lot of routes in the United States, a majority of the chargers now that are available are 150 kilowatt or faster. So he was right and he was wrong. He was right in that if that was the constraint, yeah, there was no way possible. But that wasn't the constraint. And it was possible, and I know because I did it. Now, like I said, it just happens to work out that it was 1,100 miles. And the thing that's interesting is I didn't go in with that intent. What I was doing, for those of you who follow my channel, you'll know that I was trying to replicate a speed test that Bjorn Nyland out in Norway does. Now, I knew Bjorn wasn't going to be testing a 2020 Bolt EV, but he does these tests as data points, and I think they're a good way of comparing cars. But in order for it to work, everybody needs to be driving a similar speed, right? I've done a side-by-side drive with Bjorn and others, and you really need that sort of similar speed to tell if cars are actually close. And the problem is Bjorn drives really, really fast, and his average driving speed was still faster than what I ended up averaging over that 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles that I drove. I think I averaged about 69 miles per hour driving speed, where he still tends to average about 72, 73 miles an hour. So no matter what, the time was still going to be slower, but at least it gave me an approximation. But here's the thing. In order for me to get to the starting point where I knew I could drive in open roads and maintain that average driving speed was about 235 to 240 miles from my home. Now, that means that, you know, before I even got to the starting line for that 621 mile drive, I had already put 240 miles on the car. And I left, I believe, somewhere around 6 a.m. So on the way to Baker, where I was going to charge up to full so I could start this 621 mile run, I actually stopped in Hesperia at the new Electrify America chargers that went in there. I did a review, and these reviews that I was doing, these site reviews that I was doing with the 2020 Bolt EV, they actually confused a lot of people because they thought maybe I got a new car. But I hadn't. This was all just part of that review cycle. So, you know, I charged up there, did a review of the site, and then headed on to Baker. And this actually took a decent amount of time because I wanted to start from a full battery, right, in Baker. That's the only legitimate way to do that 1,000-kilometer speed test. So I charged up to full. Now, in a 2017 to 2019 Bolt EV, it would have taken much longer. So luckily for the 2020 Bolt EV, you know, it has a charging taper, which means if you're charging to 70%, 80%, 90%, it gets there faster. So I was able to charge to full, or technically 99%. I hit the target charge limit down to 95% to fool the screen and to resetting, but technically I stopped the charge at 99% because I wanted to get out of Baker at noon so that I could do this test. The test itself has been published. Most of you have seen it. I drove straight from Baker up to St. George or Washington, Utah, where I charged up on an Electrify America, and from there, that gave me enough to get me to the turnaround point, which was Beaver. There I stopped for a little bit longer. I charged up because I was eating dinner, right? And it was one of those things I was trying to provide my take on how people should be traveling in EVs. So I ate dinner in Beaver and charged up a little bit longer. It's not wasted time, you're eating dinner. And that allowed me to, on the drive back, drive past Washington, Utah, and go all the way into Mesquite, where I topped up for a little bit on the Mesquite charger at the Walmart in Mesquite, Nevada. And then, of course, I needed to go charge up at the Electrify America charger in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is actually off the freeway, and it takes a while to get there. I stopped there with Alex Venz when he and I did a side-by-side parallel drive out to Vegas and back. And, you know, I charged up there basically just enough to get back to Baker, got back on the road, and I got back to Baker. It was, you know, just before midnight. And so, yeah, by that point in time, when I got back to Baker, you know, right around midnight, I had taken up a good portion of time already. Most of the day was gone. But again, like I said, I wasn't wasting time. I wasn't going to need to charge to full again like the first time I did in Baker. And I knew it was going to be a long weekend because I was heading up to the Bay Area the next day. And so I only charged up enough to get basically back to Ventura in Baker, California, and because, like I said, I wanted to get to sleep and I wanted to, you know, to get some rest before I headed to Northern California. And so I basically headed straight back to Ventura. And I remember this night very well because, you know, I'm heading back through Calabasas. Fog was coming in. You know, it was a weird weather. It turned out to be the morning that Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and all of those people died in that tragic helicopter crash in the Calabasas Hills. So I was coming back basically early morning before that happened. And if I recall correctly, I got home at about 4 a.m. So I left at 6 a.m. I got back at 4 a.m. You know, I'm not a math surgeon, but I believe that's about 22 hours. And like I said, I know exactly how far it is because it's basically 500 miles out, and I drove a little bit more than 600 miles from Baker out to Beaver, Utah, and back to Baker again. And again, none of this was done to set some sort of a record. This just happened to happen. And in fact, had I driven the 2020 Bolt EV with the intent of seeing how many miles I could put on it in a 24-hour period, well, first of all, I never would have charged to full in Baker, right? And I would have went about the trip a little bit differently. But the point being is, the car was up to it, and the charging infrastructure was up to it, because every charger I used was faster than 50 kilowatts. So it allowed me to travel, you know, at the Bolt EV's best pace. And like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't recommend anybody drive 1,100 miles in a day. I probably shouldn't have, but like I said, I thought I had the car for only a short period of time. You know, I headed up, like I said, stopped in Pismo Beach, stopped at the Recargo chargers up in Prunedale the next day. So I did a lot of driving that weekend, but it was because I thought I'd have to turn the car in early. So it really forced my hand, but I wouldn't recommend anyone do that. Even in a gasoline car, I wouldn't recommend someone try to drive 1,100 miles in a day. It's a lot of driving, and you come to welcome those 30 to 40, 45-minute charging stops, because you're on the road for a lot of hours. And then, of course, the other thing that, like I said, I feel so frustrated dealing with people who maybe they know Teslas, and so they think they're experts in everything EV, saying how a 2020 Bolt EV would be so much faster on that drive than a 2017 to 2019 Bolt EV, and that's actually not true. And the reason for it is the charge rate up to 50% is the same. And most experienced Bolt EV owners will tell you on long road trips, you don't really want to charge past 60 to 65% anyway. So the advantage that the 2020 Bolt EV has is very, very minimal. Sure, you have about 20 miles of extra range starting, and I did notice that the 2020 Bolt EV's thermal management system was better. The battery was just better able to manage multiple DC fast charges and higher, more demanding driving. So you get a little bit of an edge there. And yes, it's maintaining 55 kilowatt up to 50% battery, but its battery is almost 10% larger, so you get 10% more at that peak speed. And again, the taper gives you more flexibility, because your speed doesn't just suddenly drop off. Your charging speed doesn't just suddenly drop off like it does in the 2017 to 2019 Bolt EV. But those are all sort of just incremental improvements. A bulk of your charging time should be done below 50% battery in either case. And so really the only question is, do you have open roads? Are you able to drive 70 to 80 miles an hour like I was able to legally? And do you have access to faster than 50 kilowatt chargers? And right now, majority of Americans do. Thanks to Electrify America, they've built out a network across most major interstates and travel corridors. So like I said, it's just a little frustrating to me to be spoken to like I don't know what I'm talking about. And suffice to say that no, I did in fact drive 1,100 miles in a day, right, in about 22 hours. Like I said, I have the time slips. That wasn't my intent to do, but people seem to think it's noteworthy, so I figured I would just officially put it out there and say, hey, it happened. And if you don't like it, then maybe you need to question why it is, you're bad-mouthing the public charging infrastructure, why you're bad-mouthing the Chevy Bolt EV, which, hey, I'll fully acknowledge is not the most capable in terms of fast long distance travel. There are a lot of cars that are better, but this was the best there was for $35,000 in 2016. So you have it, you have that. So, and now you can get them for $20,000, $25,000, used less than that, new maybe just a little bit more than that. So, I mean, it's still a heck of a deal. And it's still certainly capable of getting you very far very fast. Anyway, let me know what, if there's something you want to know about the trip that I took, what you think about the public charging infrastructure. Have you ever been able to take long trips in your Chevy Bolt EV or other, other EV using the public charging infrastructure? If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.